Assalamu alaikum. Okay, Vacho, I hope all of you are doing okay. So now we're going to start the lymphatic system. So I think after lymphatic system, we'll revise the skeletal system, as some students were not present during the earlier lectures. Moreover, it would be a review session for the guys who have already attended the lectures of the skeletal system. Now we'll go into some depth, and then the only topic remaining would be the nervous system and the eye. Now, nervous system neuroanatomy is a completely subject in its own. So we're going to do that later on, and then we'll be finished with our systemic anatomy. So only two or three systems remaining in the systemic anatomy. So let's start today's topic, that is the lymphatic system. So, as I've told you earlier, lymphatic system is a part of the circulatory system. There is a major circulatory system that consists of arteries and veins, and that system is known as the cardiovascular system, in which the heart pumps the blood through the arteries towards the tissue, and then it is the content, the nutrients are extracted, it is changed into the oxygen is extracted from the oxygenated blood into the tissues, and then deoxygenated blood is transported back to heart via veins. Then that blood goes to the respiratory circulation, pulmonary circulation, where it again gets oxygenated and nutrients are added from the liver in the blood, and then the whole cycle repeats. So that was how the circulatory system, that cardiovascular system worked. Now, in addition to that system, there is another drainage system that is present in our body, and this drainage system is accessory, is very important for our venous system, or normal systemic venous system. About 10 to 20% of the tissue fluid is absorbed by the lymphatic channels, small lymphatic channels which are located within the tissues. They begin blindly in the tissue spaces, in the intracellular spaces, and then are ultimately drained back towards the main venous system or systemic venous system. The tissue fluid that flows in the lymphatics is known as the lymph. This lymph passes through filters, small filters, which are known as lymph nodes. And lymph from most of the tissues is clear and colorless. But the lymph from the small intestine is milky white due to its high content of fat is present in that lymph. So what happens is, when we eat food, the fat particles, free fatty acids, the cholesterol, etc., triglycerides, all of these get absorbed through the intestinal lumen into the uh, intracellular spaces, from where it is taken up by the lymphatic channels. So this lymph is then transported to bigger channels, which then combine together at the cisterna chyli to form the lymphatic duct. That lymphatic duct empties out into the inferior vena cava, and hence this lymph becomes a part of the vein circulation. So let's talk about some components of the lymphatic vessels. You may feel like we are repeating this lecture because all of these things we've studied earlier, but it is essential for the new students. That's why we are uh, going in a systematic way to finish all the compulsory systems that are present in the body. So the components of lymphatic system includes the lymph vessels, They are small vessels just like the arteries and veins. Moreover, it contains central lymphoid tissues such as bone marrow and thymus, as well as peripheral lymphoid organs such as lymph nodes, spleen, and lymphoid nodules of alimentary and the respiratory tract. Now, by now you must understand the concept of central and peripheral. So central, whenever we say central, it means the main or major organ or the organ system that is present that controls all of the peripheral things, such as in central nervous system, the brain and spinal cord comes. So spinal cord and brain are central in their function to the nervous system. They control all the functions that go on in the arms, legs, etc. via neurons, via nerves. Same as that, the cells which are present in the lymphoid vessels, in the lymph vessels, they are mainly controlled by bone marrow and thymus. Lymphocytes are mainly matured in bone marrow and thymus. That's why we call them B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. So the central lymphoid tissue, the major organs which would control the composition and everything else of the lymph are the bone marrow and the thymus. The bone marrow is present inside the hollow cavity that is present in our long bones. So the bone marrow is most prevalent in the long bones such as femur, such as radius ulnar, such as humerus, tibia fibula. So this bone marrow is mainly located there. Thymus is a small gland that we'll study in more detail in the next slides. Whereas peripheral lymphoid organs are the supportive organs which are located peripherally, such as the lymph nodes, which are small channels through which whole lymph has to pass. They are actually aggregations or checkpoints that are present in between the lymphatic channels. Spleen is a major lymphoid organ, provides support to the lymphatic system. It filters out dead or aged cells. Moreover, the lymph nodes of alimentary tract, which help us in absorption of fats, as well as that of the respiratory tract, are very important lymphoid organs. Moreover, there would be circulating cells in the lymph that are known as lymphocytes. So lymphocytes are white blood cells which help us in maintaining a steady immunity. They fight the infections, they destroy the damaged dead cells, and they generally help out in maintaining a healthy, physically healthy life for the person. So these lymphocytes are produced from hematopoietic stem cells and they get matured in the bone marrow mainly, and they get matured in the bone marrow or the thymus. That's why the difference in names, that is B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. Both B and T lymphocytes have different functions, as we'll study in hematology chapter of physiology. So when we'll study blood, we'll study all of the cell lines and we'll study all of the functions of different cell lines, different cells which are present in the blood. So now let's take a look at this picture, this pictogram that shows the major lymphoid organs as well as lymph vessels. So starting from the bottom, if there is an infection in the right first toe of the right foot, what happens is To fight this infection, lymphocytes would be sent towards this site. Neutrophils would be sent towards this site, and they would fight the infection, the bacteria which is producing infection there, and try to kill that bacteria. Now, neutrophils, let's suppose in an ideal scenario, the neutrophils have killed the bacteria. So now dead bacteria are just lying there, as well as there are dead cells that are present at the site. Dead cells, why? Because during the fight or before the initiation of the immune reaction, before the initiation of the immunity, some epithelial cells would die because of the infection of the bacteria. Moreover, after trauma, many cells die due to ischemia during inflammation. What happens is, whenever there is inflammation, there is excessive fluid, excessive cells that are present there, and the normal tissue is unable to maintain its structure and function due to loss of oxygen as well as loss of blood supply. So there is dead material that has accumulated there. It includes the dead cells of the human body, of the epithelium, muscle tissue, etc. Moreover, it also includes dead or dying bacteria. So all of these things plus byproducts of cells are present there. Now, if we want to clear all this mess, we need a proper channel, a proper system that would process all of this debris, and then that would break it down so that it can be expelled from the body. That helps, that takes place via lymph vessels and lymph nodes. So lymphatic channel is basically just like a dumpster of all of the dead and debrided cells and cell products, byproducts, etc. So when there is infection in this toe, all of the dead and debrided cells would be would be eradicated, would be extracted from here via the lymph vessels, and the lymph vessels would start taking it upwards toward the larger vessels. Now what happens is, when all of this debris, all of these deranged cells, they come towards the lymph nodes, these lymph nodes would get swollen up because they have to process all of these dead things and remove the harmful things. So these enlarged lymph nodes are due to infected right first two, and they are trying to process all of the backlog that has come that came from here. Now after processing, they would empty out uh, the processed cells or the components of the cell into larger blood vessels, which would then take these up. Now another checkpoint comes, that is inguinal nodes. These inguinal nodes would again try to process these things. They would stop if any alive bacteria is trying to enter the blood through these channels. So they would stop that bacteria and kill that, and they would get enlarged in the process. Now these channels would combine together to form further larger lymph nodes, which would then combine to form lymphatic duct. This lymphatic duct would then empty out into the inferior vena cava. So this large lymphatic duct is also known as the thoracic duct because it is formed in the thorax. Apart from these, there are lymph vessels which are present in the arms, lymph vessels of intestines. Lymph vessels are present nearly and all over the body. Now, The cells of dead bacteria which are remaining would be further processed via spleen, and it would also play a role in examining the dead byproducts, and it would also try to filter those infectious materials. Moreover, there is a function of spleen. It serves as a filter for our normal blood cells. So all of the blood has to pass through the spleen, and the spleen functions as a filter. It kills the aged cells, the cells which are old. The spleen filters those cells and kills those cells so that these cells do not harm us, because aged cells or old cells can easily get mutated, can transform into cancerous cells, etc., and moreover they are not serving their purpose, they're not maintaining their functions. That is why they need to be destroyed. Such as red blood cells, they live for about 120 days. When they reach their end period, they lose the elasticity and then are killed by the spleen. The spleen then transports the byproducts of the cells through the lymph vessels or through the uh, this hepatic system back into the veins. Then there is the major lymph organ, central organ, that is known as the thymus, that is present over the heart. It is a gland. So, moreover, there are tonsils, small glands, lymphatic glands that are present in the throat region. There are axillary lymph nodes. So, these were all of the lymphatic organs and vessels, and I think you now uh, get the story how all of this system is supposed to work. So the lymph, let's talk about lymph vessels now. The lymph capillaries start blindly from the intercellular spaces that are present between the cells, and they are larger usually than the blood capillaries. And their endothelial wall is permeable to to a substance of much greater molecular size, because they have to absorb the fat, they have to absorb the cellular components, the dead cells. That's why they can allow passage of much larger molecules. The lymph vessels pass through the filters of the regional lymph nodes, which would trap the particulate matter. So, if any dead bacteria is coming through the lymph and is trying to pass the lymph node, it would trap that bacteria and try to break it down into further smaller byproducts. The filtered lymph would then pass through the lymph node into the larger lymphatic vessels and is eventually collected into two trunks, that is the thoracic duct, which is also known as the left lymphatic duct, and the right lymphatic duct, which drain into the brachiocephalic veins. Now let's talk about the central lymphoid tissue. Central lymphoid tissue includes the bone marrow and the thymus. All the pluripotent lymphoid stem cells are initially produced by bone marrow except during early fetal life. So, what are pluripotent cells? Pluripotent cells are those cells which can mature into any multiple types of the cells, such as a stem cell is a pluripotent cell. A stem cell in a child may transform into an epithelial cell which would be present on the skin, or may differentiate into a mucous cell which would be present in the stomach, or may differentiate into a beta Langerhans cell that would be present in the pancreas. So Pluripotent cells are the main precursor cells which would then differentiate into different types of cells of the body. The pluripotent lymphoid stem cells are present in the bone marrow, and they are produced by the bone marrow. So these cells can then be differentiated into T lymphocytes or B lymphocytes depending on the organ where they are mature. So they are uh, further matured down the line by different organs. So throughout our life, these pluripotent lymphoid stem cells would be produced in the bone marrow except during the fetal life, during the period in which the fetus is present in the mother's uterus. During the fetal life, these pluripotent lymphoid stem cells are produced from the yolk sac and then from the liver for some time. So basically, in adult, the pluripotent lymphoid stem cells can differentiate into B lymphocytes or T lymphocytes or natural killer cells, all of these cell lines, etc., or the memory cells. So bone marrow would also help in differentiation of B lymphocytes. When pluripotent lymphoid stem cells are differentiated into lymphocytes, there would be some lymphocytes which would mature in the bone marrow and would be known as B lymphocytes. Then there are some cells which would mature in the thymus and they would be known as T lymphocytes. Thymus helps differentiation of T lymphocytes which are long-lived and join the circulating pool of lymphocytes and populate the thymus-dependent areas of lymph nodes and other peripheral lymphoid organs. Now let's talk about lymph nodes. Lymph nodes are small nodules of lymphoid tissue that are found in the course of smaller lymphatics. So when smaller lymphatics are going towards the larger lymphatics, these are the checkpoints that are present on the lymphatics. The lymph passes through one or more lymph nodes before reaching the larger lymph trunks. Nodes are oval or kidney shaped and 1 to 25 millimeters long, and usually they would occur in groups. That is, there are multiple axillary lymph nodes or inguinal lymph nodes, mesenteric lymph nodes in the mesentery of the intestines, mediastinal lymph nodes in the mediastinum. But at times they may also appear singularly as a single lymph node. Then there are some superficial lymph nodes which are arranged along the veins, and there are some deep lymph nodes that are arranged along the arteries. So this is how a lymph node looks. This is the afferent vessel that is carrying the uh, blood, carrying the lymph towards the lymph node. There are multiple afferent vessels that are entering a single lymph node, and then the lymph is processed within the lymph node, and then it goes towards the efferent lymph vessel that would then combine with larger lymph vessels. Each lymph node has a slight depression on one side, which is known as the hilum. This is the hilum from where its main blood supply would enter and efferent vessel would exit. The artery enters the node and the veins with efferent lymphatics would come out of it at the hilum. The afferent lymphatics enter the node at different parts of its periphery. These are afferent vessels. Remember, efferent is always exiting. E for efferent, E for exit. ठीक है, E वाली is exiting and A वाली आ रही है, going towards. Structurally, a lymph node is made up of the following parts: a fibrous or reticular framework, lymphatic channels, cortex, medulla, and blood channels. So, if we look at the lymph node, the outermost layer is the capsule, then comes the outer cortex, and then the inner cortex and innermost medulla where sinuses are present, that are small filter like channels. And then there are medullary cords. So if you look at here, this is the inner cortex, the medulla is innermost, this blackish colored thing. This is the outer cortex where B lymphocytes will be present. B lymphocytes will be present in the inner cortex. Then there are the blood vessels which are supplying the lymph node, and harmful substances are also being extracted from the blood vessels here. So let's talk about the lymph node in detail. So I think we'll talk about the lymph node in the next lecture, and after that we can start. Let's see. Let's talk about the structure of the lymph node in the next lecture. And after lymph node, we'll start reviewing the skeletal system. We'll just go through it and then we'll start the joints and the eye. That would be our last topic. So, I guess that will start at the lymph node in the next lecture again. Okay, so thank you. If you have any questions regarding this, you can ask me in the WeChat group. So, if you have any questions, please post it in the group so that others can also avail this knowledge. Thank you.